Yes, we are ready now.
Okay. So the program today is going to be focused on Canadian immigration and opportunities in Canada for nurses. I want to do it a little differently, though. I want to I'll talk for a little bit, just explain the general overview of the program, and then would have some sort of a back and forth, and you guys can ask as many questions as you want, and then we can spend the rest of the time just answering those questions. I want it to be less of a lecture and more of a conversation than a lecture. So the program that I'm talking about today is called the Canadian Express Entry. It's a program that is developed by the government of Canada a couple of years ago, and the idea behind it is to recruit professionals to come to Canada, and some of those professions include nurses, of course, and that's what we're here is that most of you are nurses. The way that it works is that it's based on a point system. And so they award points for various factors. So if you've taken the English proficiency test, you get a certain number of points. If your age, if you have family in Canada, if you have a pre-arranged job offer, and all of those things, you get a point. The minimum point is 67 points out of 100. And so if you're able to score 67 points or higher, then you get picked. They'll send you an email inviting you to apply for permanent residency in Canada. One of the ways that we help is that we facilitate the process for you to get licensed in Canada, and it's a fairly easy process. There are certain provinces that are easier than others. The easy ones are Nova Scotia is one of the easy ones, and Alberta is also one of the other one. And the way that you get licensed is that if you're from 7 countries, which Nigeria is one of those 7 countries, and which is ironic because typically they don't have programs specifically for Nigerians, but Canada does. And so if you're a registered nurse in Nigeria and you're in good standing, you don't have any criminal history or you don't have any pending disciplinary actions against you, you could apply for license in Canada. And the decision process typically takes about a week for them to give you a decision. And then once the decision is made on your application and you've taken and passed the NCLEX, you get a license to practice nursing in Canada. And then we also help you find work in Canada. And so together with the license and the work, you get points for that in the Express Entry, and that would allow you to be able to come to Canada and practice. The whole process takes a maximum of 6 months. So it's a lot quicker than the American process, especially because of retrogression. And for those who want to practice in America, when you go to Canada, there's no contract, right? So we don't, unlike the US where we have staffing agencies who require you to sign contracts, we don't have any staffing agencies in Canada that would require you to sign contracts. We help you find the jobs directly with the employers. And so you would apply for the job, you attend the interviews, and then if you get the job, they would give you a job offer. And so there's no contract requirement that says how long you have to live in Canada for. So the idea behind it is that you go to Canada and you start working, and when the retrogression opens up in the US, you'll be able to move to the US much quicker and end up living in the US. But if you want to remain in Canada, you could also do that. And so that is a general overview of the program. I know I've sort of gone really quick. I'll open the floor for questions, and if you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them, and then we can bounce ideas off each other.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. Okay, so if you have any question based on what he just said now, kindly drop it on the chat box. He's going to address that and he can continue. We have a lot of things to share with you. He wants it to be more of an interaction between you and him, so you can ask him questions. He will clarify you before we move on. Okay? So any question in the chat box? Okay, no question yet, Mr. Douglas.
Okay, so I'll move on. So the Express Entry process in Canada, the one that we're talking about is called the Federal Skilled Worker Program. And the way that it works is that they have the minimum requirement includes your work experience, language ability, education, proof of funds, admissibility and where you're going to live in Canada. So the skilled work experience, for you to get the maximum number of points, you need to have a minimum of 3 to 5 years of experience as a nurse. Now, I did mention earlier that you have to have, a nursing license in Nigeria and be in good standing for you to be considered for this opportunity. The language ability, obviously, Canada has English and French as the official languages, and so you only have to be able to be proficient in one. So if you're proficient in English, and then you also speak French and you pass the exams in French, you get maximum points. If you only speak English, you get half of the points. There's the education requirement, which is that you have to have at least a diploma. If you have a bachelor's degree, you get the full points. If you have a diploma, you get lesser points. Now, the proof of funds, if you don't have a pre-arranged employment offer in Canada, you need to have the minimum a little over 13,000 Canadian dollars to be able to show that you can support yourself when you come to live in Canada. They also have a few other selection criteria, which includes if you have family members in Canada, such as siblings. I mean, it doesn't have to be immediate relatives, just cousins, distant relatives in Canada, who would be able to help you resettle or better acclimate yourself in Canada. You would also get points for that. One of the biggest things about this whole thing is that there's a program called the Provincial Nomination Program, where the federal government of Canada has actually relegated the responsibility of immigration to some of the provinces. So if you go through the provinces and you apply as a nurse and you get the job offer, the provinces can actually give you a provincial nomination. And with that provincial nomination, you can apply for a Canadian permanent resident, with that provincial nomination. And it's much easier for you to come to Canada with that nomination. I see there's some questions in the chat, so I could answer some of those before we move on.
Okay. So someone said, I recently passed my NCLEX RN exam and I signed a contract with BCIN Pathway. Can I join this pathway now?
Yeah. I'm not. When you say BC, are you talking about British Columbia in Canada, or are you talking about an agency in the US?
Most likely it should be British Columbia.
Right. So if you're already in the process with British Columbia and Canada, I think most of the provinces, right. So most of the provinces have the same program that I'm talking about, the 7 countries. If you have a license in any of these 7 countries, which Nigeria is also a part of, you're already in the process. So this is not any different from what you're currently in. Because you're already doing the express entry, and so you're already in the process. That's exactly what we're talking about. So if you're already on that path, then you don't need to do anything. You're already on the path that we're talking about.
Okay, I think you addressed that. So another person said, what do you say about IELTS points we need to have in the 4 parts?
Yeah, for the English proficiency exams, you need to score at least a proficiency level, which typically is about a 7.0 or higher. So that's what you need to score on the English proficiency.
Okay. Thank you.
And obviously, the IELTS, is only valid for 2 years, and so if you're taking it, less than 2 years, or if 2 years has passed since you've taken it, you're going to need to take a new one. We were partnered with Decency to sponsor at least 5 people who have passed the NCLEX and they're looking to immigrate to Canada. And I think Decency, that the company will share some of those details with you if you guys are interested. We're sort of doing a trial run with 5 people and all expenses paid to get you to go to Canada, and we can talk about the particulars later with Decency. That's a program that we have with them, and they can shed some more light on those.
Okay, so we already announced, if you're just joining us, you are eligible for the sponsorship. Kindly send us an email to decencystaffing@gmail.com. Send us your resume, preferably, and we will get back to you if you are selected. So someone has here on the chat box, how long will the process take from start to immigration?
Yeah, so the government of Canada advertises between 3 months to 6 months. The timelines that I've seen people get it as quickly as 3 months. I've seen some people get it in 4 months. It all depends on how quickly you can get your documents to them and how quickly you can fill out the application. But let's say you filled everything out today and you got everything to them today. I would say maximum of 3 to 4 months, you should be able to get the process completed.
Okay, thank you so much. So do we have any question based on what he has said so far? Someone says, concerning the first step, I didn't get that.
Right. Well, the first step is to see whether or not you're qualified. I'm going to post the Nova Scotia link in the chat box for you guys to click. I'm going to copy and paste the link to Nova Scotia. We have a good relationship with the National Health Service in Nova Scotia in terms of employment and placement for nurses. The CEO, Karen Oldfield, is a good friend of mine, and she's obviously interested in recruiting people to Canada. And so if somebody's interested in Nova Scotia, we could always talk about that. But I just pasted the link to the Nova Scotia Express, designated jurisdictions. So click on it, and then you can get some of those answers. Now, Nova Scotia is just one of the provinces in Canada. Obviously, there's several provinces, and this is not specific to Nova Scotia, but we do have a relationship with them. And so if you wanted that province, it would be much easier to navigate. Obviously, there's other provinces that you could explore if you're interested.
Okay, Mr. Douglas, someone is asking what IELTS is recommended. Which of the IELTS? Is it academy or general?
Yeah, so it's general IELTS.
So someone is asking, having signed with an agency in USA and in process, is it going to cause any harm joining this package?
The answer is no. That's a good question. If you've joined an agency, you've already signed a contract with a US agency, and you've signed a contract. It depends on when your I-140 was applied for. So let's say, if they applied for your I-140 after May 1st of this year, your priority date is probably, retrogress for at least a year. And if they haven't filed if they filed it after, July, then your priority date is retrogress for about 3 years, right? Because that's what the visa bulletin says. And so in theory, you could go to Canada and then work in Canada because you don't have any contracts in Canada, right? So in theory, you can go to Canada, and then if the visa retrogression goes away next week, you could join the process and come to the US then, because there's no contract in Canada that says you have to work for a year or 2 years or 3 years. So you have that flexibility to leave when you want to from Canada. The only disadvantage that I would say in doing this process, obviously, is that you would be working towards 2 different avenues. If you haven't taken your IELTS yet, this process would require you to take the IELTS. So that's one of the disadvantages. But you're going to need the IELTS anyway, so you might as well take it. The other disadvantage is that the nurses in Canada are paid much lower than nurses in the US. So for Nova Scotia, the minimum pay for nurses in Canada is $30 an hour. Now, 30 Canadian dollars, which comes to about $24 US an hour. So $30 to $40 an hour Canadian dollars is what the pay rate for Canadian nurses are. So you're not going to get paid as much as you would have if you were in the US, but it allows you to gain much valuable experience. It allows you to leave your home country earlier if that's an issue for you. And then you can practice. You have the experience of practicing in Canada, and then you can migrate from Canada to the US when the process does open up for you.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think you addressed that better now. I think that question was from Stella. Stella says, will dependents benefit from the scholarship?
Yeah, I mean it's the exact same process as the U.S. process. Now, like I mentioned before, there's no scholarship. The thing that we are partnering with Decency to offer to you is all expenses paid to get the first 5 people to Canada to sort of explore the process. And that obviously includes your dependents. But when we talk about scholarship in the general sense, you know how when you take the NCLEX, you have to prep for the NCLEX and travel to go take the NCLEX and all of that. You don't have to do any of those in Canada, because the idea is that you've already taken and passed the NCLEX, so you already have the NCLEX passed. And the only thing you would need to take is the IELTS, which is already taken in your home country. And so in terms of scholarship that we're sponsoring with Decency, that would include the cost of getting you licensed in Canada. And if that's the question, then yes, those will be covered.
Okay, thank you so much. I think you cleared that. So if you're eligible, you've passed your NCLEX, the 5 persons we're sponsoring are people who have their NCLEX already. So we want to give you all expense paid sponsorship. Like he rightly said, Mr. Decency has given out the email decencystaffing@gmail.com. So if you are eligible, just send us your resume and we will take it up from there. So we have a question. It says, does ALBERTA pathway require IELTS?
Yeah, all of the provinces require you to take some sort of proficiency exams. If you wanted to go to Quebec is an English-speaking province, and so if you wanted to go to Quebec, you'd have to take the French proficiency exam. But besides that, all of the provinces require you to take the IELTS. Alberta doesn't require you to take IELTS for the state, for the province specific, but for the express entry to go into Canada for the immigration process, you're going to need to take the IELTS. So in other words, you don't need the IELTS to get licensed, but you need IELTS for immigration.
Just like the visa screen for US.
Right. Yeah, similar to that, right.
Okay. Thank you. Kosisochukwu said, how can one initiate the express entry process?
Yeah, so I'm going to post the link to the express entry process in the group chat, and you can read all about it. It's a very simple process. You go online, you click on the link, you register, you answer the questions, and if you're eligible, you would get an email telling you you're eligible. If you're not eligible, you get an email telling you you're not eligible. I mean, it's a very simple and straightforward process. And I just pasted the link in the group chat so you can take a look at it.
Okay. Okay, so to know if you're eligible for this express pathway, we have a link on the chat box. Kindly copy the link and then follow the prompts. And then you will get an email, like he rightly said, if you are eligible. And for the people who are asking about the email for you to send your information if you're eligible for the sponsorship, is decencystaffing@gmail.com. Just send us your resume and we will get back to you. So we have the link now. We have the Nova Scotia link on the chat box, and we have the link for you to apply for the express Canada Express entry pathway. So you can copy down the two. So we have a question from Bibiana. The scholarship, is it to get Canadian license or to get job in Canada?
Yeah, it's for both. So the way that we would help or how we would help you, first of all, is to get you licensed in Canada. And so we would, refer you to Nova Scotia. If you don't want to go to Nova Scotia, we can look at the other provinces. Now, the other provinces, like I mentioned, are more difficult to get. And so if one of these other provinces that you want to live in is more difficult to get, then we have to have a conversation about where you want to stay and why you want to stay there and other factors. But to answer the question, The process is for both. So what we would do is first get you licensed, and then after you get licensed, we would apply for several jobs for you. That would require you to attend interviews. DCNC and myself and my staff will prepare you for those interviews, interviewing skills, how to show up for the interview, the questions you're going to be asked, how to anticipate some of those questions. And then we'll get you scheduled for the interviews. Now, you're going to have 2 or 3 different interviews. And then after the interviews, you'll be offered a job. Depending on how well you do at the interview, and the employers would choose to offer you a job or not offer you a job. If after the first 3 you don't get offered a job, then we'll get feedback from the employer as to why they're choosing not to employ you. And when we get a constructive feedback, we'll retrain you, re-prepare you for the next series of interviews. But basically, we'll keep preparing you and interviewing until you get a job, because you need the job to be able to move to Canada. Once you get the job, we will guide you through the Express Entry program, and then fly you to Canada to resettle, to begin working. So the question is whether or not it covers the license and the job. The answer is both. We help you get the license, and then we help the job.
Okay, so Mr. Douglas, you're trying to tell them that, because we have a series of questions here, so let's see if we can get them both at the same time. So if the candidate gets the license in Canada, and then we get a job for him or her in Canada, then we can now kickstart the Express pathway. So the duration of getting the license and getting the Express pathway would take minimum of 6 months or maximum of 6 months.
Yeah, the license would take 5 days. So, the link I sent about the Nova Scotia talks about this. They have a series of documents they need from you. So they need to get your license in one of the 7 countries, which, if you've already taken the NCLEX, you have a license in the US, and the US is one of those countries. And that's for people who are not Nigerian. If you're Nigerian, those 7 countries includes Nigeria. And so if you have a license, a nursing license in Nigeria, and you're in good standing, they're going to need to verify that license. And so they have a series of documents that they ask for. If you give them everything today, it's going to take 5 days for them to give you a nursing license in Canada. After we get the nursing license, then we can go apply for jobs, because now you're qualified to practice nursing in Canada. Applying for the jobs, depending on how well you interview, would take 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how well you interview. If you interview well and you get the job, that is just 1 month that we've used to both get you the license and the job. Then we apply for the Express Entry, which takes a minimum of 3 months. Again, if we do it properly and we give them everything you need, it only takes 3 months plus 1 month, that's 4 months. So in theory, if everything goes according to plan and you give us everything we need to be able to help you, you're looking at between 4 to 6 months from the time we start till you arrive in Canada.
Thank you so much. Also, we have a question. For those that have not written the NCLEX, is there another faster pathway other than the EEP? I think the person is trying to talk about the Express pathway.
Yeah, the good thing about Canada is that you don't necessarily need to write the NCLEX to get licensed in Canada. So, and again, I keep talking about Nova Scotia because that is the province we have a relationship with, and we've done significant research on those. But in Nova Scotia specifically, you can get what is called a conditional license to practice. So if you haven't taken the NCLEX and you're licensed in Nigeria, you could apply for a license in Nova Scotia. They'll give you a conditional license, which means that you cannot practice nursing on your own. You need to do it under somebody else's supervision. With all of those, you can actually immigrate to Canada and take the NCLEX in Canada with a conditional license. So the answer is no, you don't necessarily need to have a license to come to Canada to work.
Okay, so someone says, I think we've replied that Tonia Asueni said, what qualifies you for this sponsorship? I think she's referring to the decency sponsorship program. If you have your NCLEX, that's the first requirement. If you've passed your NCLEX, you can reach out to us. I've dropped the email on the chat box. Okay, so if someone is asking if they want to go for the Express pathway, what's the cost implications? Say
Yeah, so the cost to get licensed in Canada is 57 Canadian dollars, which comes to about 30 something US dollars. So $57 Canadian dollars to get the license in Canada. The express entry, I want to say it's about 615 Canadian dollars to apply for the express entry. So in theory, you should be able to get all of these done for less than 1,000 Canadian dollars. I think it's about 700 to 750 Canadian dollars, which is about 500 US dollars. So from the process of getting licensed to getting the express entry is about about less than 1,000 Canadian dollars. The good thing about the express entry is that you don't have to pay the fee, the 650 or the $700 until you've received an email inviting you to apply for permanent residency. So really, I mean, there's no risk. You apply for it. If they don't pick you, you don't pay anything. No harm, no foul. You walk away. If they pick you and you want to move forward, then you pay the application fee and then you go through with the process. The nursing, however, though, if you want a license, you have to pay for the licensing fee, like I said, which is 57 Canadian dollars. Then you can get licensed.
Thank you so much. So someone is talking about age. I think you mentioned the age to know about the entry point, to know if they are eligible for the express pathway. So she's asking, what's the minimum age limit for this? And another person said, what of people who are 51 years and above, what's their, I think was their stake or so? That's what she's trying to pay.
Yeah, so the minimum age is 18. So they don't take anybody about under 18 years old. If the maximum points that you can get for your age is 12 points, okay? So if from people from the ages of 18 to 35 years old, you get the maximum 12 points. If you're 36, you get 11 points, 37, you get 10, 38, you get 9, 39, you get 8, 46, you get 1 point, 47 years and older, you get 0 points. So I mean, you can kind of tell what they're aiming this at. They're looking to recruit young people,
Yeah.
to immigrate to Canada. So unfortunately, if you're 46 years old, you only get 1 point. 47 and older, you get 0 points. But if you're from the ages of 18 to 35, you get the maximum points, which is 12 points.
Thank you so much. So Komi said, please, do you assist those without NCLEX? I think he has addressed that. He talked about if you don't have the NCLEX, you can get the provisional license, and then when you get over to Canada, you can write your NCLEX over there. So you just need to know if you're eligible for the express pathway. There's a link on the chat box. Click it and you get an email if you're eligible, then you can take it up from there. So the sponsorship program is, I've talked about that. If you're joining us just now, we have an email, decencystaffing.solution.com, Decency Academy in partnership with Mr. Douglas here. He's an immigration expert from Canada, trying to sponsor 5 persons who have their NCLEX for this Canada immigration. He is an expert in this immigration expressway, so he wants most of us to benefit, and he has said a lot of things about that. So if you have questions pertaining to what we've not answered, kindly drop it on the chat box. And he wants it to be an interactive session where he gets more information from us and give us exactly what we want. So someone says, does immigration processing envelope one spouse and kids? I think he has answered that. He said yes, just like the US immigration, you get permanent residency, you get to move your family, your dependents with you. So if you have any question, you can drop it on the chat box. So someone said, sir, how can we get the conditional license? I think he has talked about that. That is 57 Canadian dollars on the Nova Scotia website, I think. So if you have any other question.
If you look at the link that I sent for Nova Scotia, it talks, click on the link, go on their website. It talks specifically about the various licenses that they grant. I implore you, I mean, all of these things that I'm talking about, there's no secret, right? I mean, this is general information that you can go online and do your own research and find some of these things out. The 2 websites that I posted has all these information that I'm talking about. I don't have any proprietary information that is known to just me. I happen to know a little bit more because this is my line of profession, but anybody can find all of these information out. So go on the Nova Scotia website. It talks about the various licenses they have. It talks about whether or not you can get conditional license, what the processes are and what the requirements are, and you'd be able to get some of those answers.
Okay, so thank you. We have a question here. It's saying, what happens to those who have applied for the Nova Scotia pathway, but no feedback from them?
Well, so Canada, like I said, Canada passed a law a couple of months ago that says that they have to give you an answer within, or Nova Scotia, the province specifically, they have to give you an answer within 5 days. If you're not hearing from them, they have a phone number, a dedicated phone number that you can call. You could also send them an email to follow up on your application. But from personal experience, I know that they're not going to act on your application until they have everything that they need. One of the ways that they verify your license is, by going online and checking the status of your license in your home country. If for whatever reason your home country does not have a license verification tool online for them to verify your standing, then you would have to get some sort of a verification letter sent directly from your nursing and midwifery board from your home country to them directly. Now, that obviously takes time, and knowing where we come from, some of those might also include you physically going there and applying some pressure for them to be able to send that letter on your behalf. So if you've applied and you're not hearing from them, I would say first check the status of your application. Make sure you've given them everything that they need. And if you've given them everything they need, then you're still not hearing from them. After that, I would say call them. And if after all that you can't get a hold of them, you can email Mr. Decency. We'll get in touch, and I could follow up on that for you.
Thank you. Someone said, what if you want to get license from South, is it South K? I don't know what the person is trying to explain, it's SK, and you've passed the NCLEX exam, you have been filed for I-140, but you want to move to Canada. How do you go around that? Okay, I think you've answered this. Maybe this person is just joining us now. So say, if one gets the conditional license from Nova Scotia and gets NCLEX sorted without sponsorship or any influence, what's the guarantee that the express entry will take 3 months? Will the province be patient enough to wait for the individual to get sorted?
Well, I mean, I don't have any guarantees for you. I don't work for the Canadian government, and invariably, I mean, that is a process that they establish. They're telling us that it takes 3 to 6 months to get it done. From personal experience, we've done it in 4 months, and so I know that it can get done if you give them everything that they're looking for. In terms of the job offer, the Nova Scotia Health Service knows that you have to go through an immigration process. And so when they give you a job offer, the job offer is conditional on you getting a visa to be able to immigrate to Canada. And so they need nurses. I mean, there's no secret that there's a shortage of nurses worldwide. And so they need the nurses, and they're not going to take away or revoke the job offer if you're going through the immigration process. So if you go with Nova Scotia Health Service, I can tell you categorically that they would be patient enough for you to go through the immigration process and arrive in Canada. But in terms of guaranteeing you that the process would only take 3 months, I cannot make that guarantee because it's not something that is in my control.
Okay, thank you. I think you answered that. So we have the links on the chat box. We have the link for Nova Scotia pathway, and we have the link to apply for the expressway to know if you're eligible. And he said you will get an email, and then you can start from there. And if you are eligible, you have your NCLEX, you want to apply for the sponsorship, reach out to us on our email, decency-starting-solution@gmail.com. I've posted that on the chat box. So if you have more questions pertaining to what he hasn't replied to, kindly drop it on the chat box. So if you have written the NCLEX and you want to move over to Canada, he said that's all right because you don't have a contract binding you in Canada. you get a job directly in Canada, unlike the NCLEX, the US pathway where you have already signed a contract. So when you go over there, if your priority date is retrogressed, you can go over to Canada. It's faster, 6 months. And he said it's from 3 months to 6 months, you get your residence permit. Am I right, Mr. Douglas? Permanent residence, right? Yes. Yes. And you can always move over to USA when you want to. There is no contract binding you. So it's like giving you the right information, because most of us are scared. The retrogression is causing a lot of panic, and here the information is coming directly from an immigration expert. So he is partnering with this NCLEX Academy to help nurses for this express pathway. And we are using 5 nurses to test run this process. And if you are eligible, that's why we are doing this Zoom meeting. We want to make it open. Just send us an email and you will. And if you don't have NCLEX, he also talked about how to go about it. You get a provisional license, and then you also go for the immigration pathway. So if you have any other question, okay, Amrache says, what's the tier? On the email, on the website, she's seeing a tier of 1 to 5.
Yeah, so the tiers, it's 0, 1, 2, and 3. So those tiers are national occupation classification tiers. There's a link right above those tiers. If you click on it, it takes you to a new page where you can put in your tiers. As a nursing, you're at tier 3. So the tiers is just basically classifying the various occupations and their classification code, right? It's a national occupation code. So nursing tier is tier 3. Typically, the code, I think, is 313 something. It's a five-digit code. And so that's all the tier is about. It's just classification code. It has nothing to do with your immigration specifically.
Okay. Leke and Linda is asking how much is everything. I think you've addressed that. It's talked about 610 Canadian dollars or so. Yes. Someone said which IELTS is needed. He said general IELTS. You need general IELTS for the immigration, not as if you need it for your license. You just need it for the immigration. Okay. Mr. Douglas, no further questions. Okay.
I see there's a question about the SK. I'm not sure what the SK is, but if you already have an I-140 filed for you in the US, it means that you have a contract with a staffing agency in the US. You have to look at the priority date on the I-140, and then figure out where you fall in terms of visa retrogression. If your priority date is soon, then it means that you'll be eligible to file for your DS-260 to come to the US quicker. If your I-140 has a priority date that is later, and it's retrogressed for 3 years, then you can look at Canada. But if you have a contract and your priority date is not retrogressed and you want to move to Canada, that is a conversation that you need to have with your staffing agency, because they've invested money in you, and it's professional to have a discussion with them before you just leave. I mean, it's not, you don't just ghost them, right? So if you're on a process and you feel like this is no longer working for you, the best thing to do would be to have a conversation with the staffing agency. And then, I mean, obviously nobody can hold you and force you to work in a specific place. And if you want to move to Canada, you can certainly do that. You just have to have a conversation with them first, and then you can make that jump.
Thank you so much. Said, okay, someone is asking if you can liaise with Nova Scotia to fasten the process. I think he has addressed that. If you have applied and they've not replied you, you can get to us. He can confirm that for you and know why you're being delayed. And there are so many reasons he mentioned. Might be the reason why you have not been replied. And maybe we can take it up from there. Okay, so someone said, so 50 years upward is not eligible. So we know that Canada is not the pathway for this group. I think he has addressed that the age gives you points, and that's because they are keen to recruit young people. So if you're above 50, it just means you lose points when it comes to age, not like you're not eligible. So you can just go for the express link, click on it and get your information. Then you will get an email if you're eligible for the express pathway. Okay, someone is asking, is there any opportunity for nursing assistant as an auxiliary nurse in Canada pathway?
Yeah, so the good thing about Canada, which you know, it's not really in the US, is that there's several occupations that qualify for express entry. And that's what the tier that somebody was asking earlier, that the National Occupation Classification codes, that's what they are. So if you click on that National Occupation Classification code, it opens a chat box. You type in your job. You know, if you're a cashier, you type in the cashier, it will pull up the occupation code and the tier. So CNAs, lab technicians, cashiers. I mean, there's all construction workers. There's all kinds of jobs outside of nursing that you can go for. So yes, to answer your question, nursing support staff, which is like CNAs or LPNs or things like that, they also qualify. The difficulty with those ones is finding an employer to give you a job offer, because you have to do that on your own, you know. And then there's several job boards that you can go online and find. Indeed.com is one of them, ZipRecruiter.com. I mean, a simple Google search of CNA jobs in Canada would pull up a job board that you can look at, apply to those jobs, attend the interviews, and if they offer you a job, and you have an LMIA, which is one of the job offer has to be an LMIA supported job offer, then you can immigrate to Canada with those. So to answer your question in sort of in a roundabout way, yes, nursing support staff qualify, but it's difficult because you have to do a lot of work to find an employer who would be willing to sponsor you. But it's possible. It's not impossible.
Okay, so I think someone applied for Nova Scotia pathway and she's asking if she can move to another province and she has her NCLEX passed. Is there any harm for someone who has already applied for Nova Scotia going through another path to another province?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Thanks for asking it. Yes, there's certainly a harm to it. Nova Scotia is a very jealous province. So the rule is that for you to be considered for the PNP Nova Scotia, you must not have applications or be interested in any other province. So if you're registered in any other province, that disqualifies you from registering in Nova Scotia. They want to be the only province that you're considering. So if you want to move to a different province, you have to withdraw your application from Nova Scotia, or you're not going to be considered, in Nova Scotia. But if you certainly want to move to a different province, you can just withdraw your application from Nova Scotia and move to that province. You just have to know that you're not going to get, the PNP or the job offer from Nova Scotia.
Okay, thank you. Someone said from Nova Scotia, we were asked to wait for feedback before going for VOR and CRC. What can you say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people saying that they've applied for Nova Scotia and they're not getting the feedback. And then there's also a question from Amina, I think, asking about Nova Scotia requesting verification and police report. Do they accept our Nigerian police report from Nigeria, or must it be a Canadian police report? Well, the answer is that, I mean, you live in Nigeria, so your police report has to be from Nigeria. The Canadian police cannot give you a police report because they don't know who you are. You've never had any encounter with them, so they can't give you any police report there. So you have to get a police report from Nigeria, and then you also have to give them the verification if they cannot independently verify your application through your home country online. So that is why we typically use the US as the licensing state. So those 7 countries that I talked about, there's US is there, New Zealand, Nigeria is on there. If you've already passed the NCLEX, you're licensed in the US. You just haven't practiced yet, but you're licensed in the US. The Nova Scotia pathway says that if you're licensed and you're in good standing in any of these countries, you can certainly apply. So when we do this, we typically use the US as your licensing authority, even though you're licensed in Nigeria. And the reason we use the US is because it's much easier to verify you. I mean, they can just go online, type in your name and your state licensing board, and they can tell whether or not you're licensed in the states and whether or not you're in good standing. So for you to get feedback from Nova Scotia, you have to give them everything they're asking for, including the verification report, the police report, and the certificate of good standing, and everything else they're asking for you to be able to get a response from them. If you don't have anything, if you don't have everything to them, you're not going to get a favorable response, because they get thousands of these applications and they only process the ones that they have a full, complete package for.
Okay, thank you. I think you addressed that. So I sent the email on the chat box. If you're eligible for the sponsorship, please, decencystaffing@gmail.com. Do we have any other question that Mr. Douglas has not dealt with?
I think there's a question from Princess asking, she has a diploma and a Bachelor of Science in Nigeria. She's currently in the UK. Her question is, which licensing body do I use for this pathway? Well, like I mentioned earlier, there's several provinces in Canada. If you want to go through Nova Scotia, you'd have to do it through the nursing college in Nova Scotia. If you want to practice in the US, obviously, you have to take the NCLEX and go through the process to get licensed in the US. And then there's a question about checking the application status in Nova Scotia. When you apply online, there's, you create an account and you apply it, and then you can occasionally go on there and check the status of your application. There's also an option for you to upload your document directly to the portal on Nova Scotia.
Can someone having 3 years contract in UK and interested in Nova Scotia acquire their license, okay, to move over to Nova Scotia when her contract expires after 3 years?
The answer is yes. I mean, you can always get a nursing license if you meet the qualifications. So if you recently took the NCLEX and you've passed, you can certainly get a Canadian license. Getting a Canadian license doesn't mean you have to practice nursing. I mean, there's several people in this group who have passed the NCLEX. They're licensed in the US, but they've never been to the US, and they haven't practiced in the US. So yes, you can get the license. As long as you keep the license in good standing and you keep renewing it when it expires, you could always move to Canada whenever you want, as long as you have a valid and active license.
Okay, someone said about the police report, what if you are a Nigerian licensed nurse who is not currently living in Nigeria? Can such person get police report from Nigeria or the country where he resides in?
I think it's basically the country where you're residing. To be safe, I mean, you've lived in Nigeria, and so to be safe, I would get both. I would get a police report from Nigeria, and then one from the country that you're currently living in, and then send both. It's always better to send more than to send less. If it's not too much trouble, I would send both. If it's too much trouble and you absolutely cannot get one from Nigeria, I would say send one from where you currently live. And if they need more, they will get a hold of you and ask you for what they need. Okay,
a quick one, Mr. Douglas. For the US pathway, we know the US doesn't accept the reports from the police without the fingerprint card. So is it the same thing for Canada? Does it apply to Canada too?
Yeah, the Canadian, it depends on the province. Nova Scotia doesn't require, you to do fingerprints. They do have a process for you to go through to get the police report, but it doesn't necessarily require you to do a fingerprint card.
So the report, the certificate of the police report is okay.
Yes, yes, okay.
Thank you. So please, can you practice with provisional registration in British Columbia? That's what someone is asking. I think Belinda.
Yeah, Belinda, I mean, a provisional license allows you to practice nursing under supervision. So it basically allows you to act as a CNA, and there's a supervisor nurse that watches everything you do. I don't know about British Columbia specifically, but I would go onto the College of Nursing of British Columbia and then look at whether or not they do offer provisional licenses. If they offer provisional licenses, then yes, you can certainly practice with it under supervision. You cannot practice independently with it, but you can certainly practice under supervision. So I would go on their website and then take a look at it and then see if you can practice over there.
Okay, so Susan says, how can she start the immigration pathway to Canada that she has her NCLEX?
Yeah, if you've already passed the NCLEX, the first step is to figure out which province you want to work in. And then when you figure out the province, you apply for a license in that specific province. Once you get the license, you apply for jobs. You look for nursing jobs, and then you apply for the nursing jobs. Once you get the nursing jobs, then you move over to the express entry, and then you apply for the express entry. If you're selected, they'll send you an email inviting you to apply for your permanent residency. You apply for the permanent residency, and then you move to Canada. So that is a general overview of the entire program from start to finish.
I think that covers the question Tonya was asking. She said, after being confirmed and getting eligibility from the express pathway, so what can she do next? What's the next thing, the further thing she needs to do? I think you just answered that.
Yeah, and then Blessing is asking if you've applied to Nova Scotia through Nigeria, is it possible for the application to be switched back to US Nova Scotia pathway? I think that's a good question. I don't know if there's a path for you to switch it over directly from the system. I do know that you can go online and edit your application. However, if you've already applied and submitted your application, going back to edit it and change certain things would raise flags, which may further delay your application. So if you've already applied as through the Nigerian pathway, I would recommend keeping it that way, and then just get them the verification that they need.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Yetunde, the police report from Nigeria is okay if you're in Nigeria, and he suggested you get in from Nigeria and any other country you are. And if they need more, they will ask you for it. Princess says she's licensed in Nigeria as well as in the UK, but currently she's working in the UK. So does she apply as a Nigerian nurse or a UK nurse for the Nova Scotia pathway?
Yeah, so let me, I can tell you the 7 countries here, and then we can. So the 7 countries are the Philippines, India, Nigeria, USA, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. So those are the 7 countries. So the UK obviously is a part of it, and if you're in the UK, you can certainly use the UK pathway or your UK license to apply. Okay.
So someone said, I think this Galaxy A02 was the one who talked about the auxiliary nursing job. I think she's asking, you made mention of some website where she can apply for jobs when you talked about the problem is actually getting a job offer. So she said, who can help, an immigration expert that can help her secure a job offer in Canada?
I would, my suggestion to you, my friend, would be to do your own research. I have heard a lot of, well, I guess in full disclosure, I'm a lawyer who is licensed in the US. I practice immigration law in the US. This Canadian opportunity is sort of a project that we're doing to try to shorten the time that people can start practicing nursing in foreign countries without having to wait for the US retrogression. And so that's what this process is about. I cannot in good faith recommend anybody for you to help you get a job. It doesn't make sense for you to go pay somebody thousands of dollars for them to help you find a job when you can do it yourself. Go on Google, look for jobs, apply for the jobs, and attend the interviews. I mean, it's the problem that we ran into is that we want people to do things for us and then we get scammed. You know, you're asking people to do these very simple things for you, and then they take money from you, and then you end up being in situations that you don't want to be in. So I just posted a link to the Nova Scotia Health Service. Click on that link. There's several jobs on that link that you can apply for. And click on the link, apply for the jobs, fill out the applications. I mean, nursing is a professional, occupation. Most of you have diplomas or degrees. I mean, you're educated people. You can do these things yourself. You don't have to go pay somebody to do these things and take advantage of you. So click on the link. There's several jobs there. You can apply for those jobs. If none of these jobs appeal to you, go on Google, find jobs in the province that you want to work, and apply for those jobs. You don't have to go pay somebody, an immigration expert, to. Immigration lawyers are not supposed to help you find jobs. If somebody's telling you that they are an immigration expert and they can help you find a job, they're lying. They're lying to take your money. The only people that can help you find a job is somebody who is themselves an employer, like a staffing company, or the direct health facility that's going to offer you a job. There's no third party that is licensed to accept money from you to help you find a job. If somebody's telling you that, they're taking your money and they're gonna, do the same thing that I'm telling you to do, which is go on Google and look and find a job. So no, don't go pay anybody or an expert to help you find a job. You can do it yourself.
Okay. Thank you. It says, what about someone who is already on the US pathway? I think he has addressed that. And she's asking, what's your advice for such person? Secondly, what are the advantages of moving to Canada compared to US?
Well, the advantages of Canada as compared to the US, I mean, the biggest one and the biggest and most obvious one is the time frame. It's much simpler and it's much quicker. That's the biggest advantage. The disadvantage is that it pays less than the US pays, but it certainly pays more than what you get paid in Africa. It pays more than what you get paid in Nigeria and in Ghana and Cameroon and all these other countries. So it doesn't pay as much as the US, but it pays better than what you are. But the biggest advantage is the time frame. It's much quicker and it's simpler, and it's also cheaper. It costs less money than it does for the US.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. You've addressed a lot of questions here, and you've said, I think you've cleared a lot of people about this Canadian Expressway and the Nova Scotia Pathway. Okay, so we don't have any other question on the chat box yet, so I don't know if you have more things to add.
Yeah, I sent the link to a few other people from Ghana. Prof, I'm going to send you a separate link. We can talk about some of the questions that those people who joined later have. Yeah, and then we can talk about some of those things. I'll send it's a private group, and I'll send you to the link, ma'am. And then if somebody has independent questions about anything immigration wise, we can talk about some of those things. And if you have any other questions, Decency has my email address. I'm very passionate about this. I will be happy to talk to you guys as much as you want and answer the questions. Sometimes through this process, the people that are trying to help you get to a point where they start feeling like they're being abused. And the reason for that is that we have day jobs. So I have a job that I do, and I'm not, this is just being done to help. And if you have questions, I mean, this thing that we're doing is about your future. If you have questions, it's always a good idea to do some research yourself and then ask meaningful questions that the person can further help you. I mean, you have to help yourself to a point that somebody can build on top of that. But you don't just show up and then say, I haven't done anything, but do everything for me. When you have that attitude, you open yourself up to abuse. People scam you, people take money from you and tell you they're going to do things that you can easily do yourself. And so the first step is Google. I mean, you can easily go on Google and type in how to immigrate to Canada as a nurse in Nigeria or as a nurse in Ghana. It'll tell you everything that I've just talked about, you know. So before you ask questions or before you ask somebody for help, please do the research yourself. Try to help yourself. Try to find the answers. And if you absolutely cannot find the answers, there's people like me and Decency and all sorts of other people that would take the time to help you with whatever questions you have. But it's always, always, always a good idea to at least try to help yourself first. Try to find the answers yourself. And if you can't find the answers, then at that point you ask for help. There's a lot of resources online. Retrogression is here to stay, unfortunately. We think that it may go away in October. The new visa bulletin for the fiscal year starts in October, but we'll probably get the October visa bulletin in September, probably September 10th, 7th, maybe. The visa bulletin will come out. So by September 10th, we will know whether or not retrogression is going to go away. And if retrogression is going to go away, then I would encourage you, if it goes away, I would encourage you to have your staffing agency by every means possible to file your I-140 in the month of October, okay, not November. Do whatever you can to make sure that they file your I-140 in October if retrogression goes away. If retrogression doesn't go away, it's always a good idea to get in line. Even if it's a three-year process, it's never a bad idea to get in line. You can get in line, sign a contract, and then pursue other opportunities like the UK or Canada or other places. New Zealand, Australia, all of those countries are looking for nurses. So it's not just relegated to the US. Obviously, your ultimate goal is to come to the US so you can start the US process, get in line, and then pursue opportunities elsewhere. And then when the US process is opened up and you're ready, then you can come to the US and work as a nurse. But don't just sit down and wait for it to go away. Explore other opportunities. You know, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Look for other opportunities. There's several opportunities out there. You are in a profession that is in need. There's a huge need for nurses, not just in the US, worldwide. Canada, New Zealand, Australia, all the UK, all of those countries are looking for nurses, and you're a hot commodity. So look at yourself as a hot commodity and market yourself as such. When you get scheduled for an interview, it's always a good idea to show up as a professional. I mean, if I think there's some sort of a disconnect between showing up for an interview in person versus virtually. If you were going to an in-person interview, there's no way that you show up in a tank top or show up in a t-shirt, you know, or with a lot of noise in your background. It's the same thing for a virtual interview. Even though you're doing it from the comfort of your home, you know, it's still a professional interview. So dress professionally, show up with ready to take notes, prepare questions to ask, and be able to express yourself, you know, be able to express yourself. Nursing is a profession where you have to interact with people, patients. And so these companies, when they're interviewing you, they're not just looking at whether or not you know how to be a nurse. They're also looking at your social cues. Are you able to have a conversation with somebody? Are you able to maintain eye contact when you're having a conversation? Are you able to express yourself? Are you able to convey your point culturally, socially? All of these things are important to being a nurse. And so aside from the qualifications, I think some people just feel like once you've passed the NCLEX, you're a hot commodity, everybody should hire you. That's simply not the truth. You know, there's thousands of people that have passed the NCLEX that have not gotten contracts because of this specific issue that we're talking about. So market yourself, brand yourself, show up as a professional, and you're going to get the job because you're needed. You know, you just have to do the other things in addition to qualifying. And if you have any other questions, like I said, I'll be more than happy to help. Reach out to Decency, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. We have been here since 6 p.m. He joined us. He has given us a lot of information about this immigration pathway. He has set links on the chat box for the express entry, and he has also set links for Nova Scotia. And he has advised us to look up these informations on Google, and don't just come out as a novice, ask questions. You will be scammed and you will be exploited by people who see your emptiness. So he has talked about the express pathway. This is a pathway that will help nurses in 6 months. It's faster than US, that's the advantage, but it doesn't pay as much as US. It is better than the country you are currently in Nigeria. So you want to go for that pathway. And he's partnering with Decency NCLEX Academy to sponsor 5 nurses who have their NCLEX. So we have an email on the chat box, decencystaffing@gmail.com. Send your resume there and we'll take it up from there. And if you don't have your NCLEX with you, you've not passed your NCLEX, he also talked about going for the provisional license, and when you get to Canada, you write your NCLEX. So he has a direct contact with Boss Decency. So you have our Decency email, we have our Decency customer service, we have our Telegram, our Instagram. Just send us a message and we will link you to him for further questions. And if you have any question that has not been addressed on the chat box, if you're just joining us, we will have recorded this session and we will send it to our YouTube channel so you can look it up and then ask questions later. Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. I don't think there is any other question here apart from the links. I think the Express Pathway link and the Nova Scotia link, I resent this one. And you talked about the work. I think there was a link you released for that LPN also for Nurse 8.
Yeah, I've sent 3 links in total. One of them was for the Express Entry, Federal Express Entry. The second one was for how to get licensed in Nova Scotia. The third link was job opportunities with the Nova Scotia Health Authority that has different jobs, you know, for nurses and lab techs and other jobs. And so all of those 3 links should be in the group chat that I sent, and so you can find them there.
Okay, thank you. Let me resend the link. I think some people just joined us. So can you just throw another light on that Express Pathway? I think people just joined now, especially that Express Pathway for them to go in and know if they are eligible.
Yeah, so the Express Entry pathway is a federal program. It's based on points out of 100 points, and they give you points based on several factors: your age, education, skills level or experience, acclimation, which is if you have, you know, a family in Canada, and then also a pre-arranged job opportunity. The minimum points to be considered is 67 out of 100 points. And so, you know, there's a link there on the Express Entry link that I sent earlier. There's a page there that would allow you to be able to, it would ask you a series of questions. And if you answer those questions, it would tell you whether or not you're eligible before you 50 years old, you get 0 points for age, but age, like I said, is just 12 points maximum. So if you're over 50 years, it means that you lose 12 points automatically. So it doesn't mean you're disqualified. It just means you don't get the maximum points for age. So over 50, you can still apply, but you know, you're not going to have any points for your age.
Thank you. Okay, that was the, I think one of the first things he said when he started this. Also, he has just replied us about the Express Pathway. So thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. And if you are eligible for the sponsorship, I'm dropping the email once more on the chat box, decencystaffing@gmail.com. Send us your resume for this sponsorship if you've passed your NCLEX. And if you don't have your NCLEX, we can still help you with this pathway. You mustn't have your NCLEX. If you get to Canada, you said you're going to write your NCLEX there. The whole process takes 6 months. So the first step before you apply, before you come for his information, is to know if you're eligible for this Express Pathway, right, Mr. Douglas?
That is true. That is true. And the website that I sent will help you
Yes.
determine whether you're eligible.
You get an email. Yes, you get an email with this link. Just go to the link and fill up the form, and it's very direct. They will send you a link if you're eligible, and that means the express pathway is sure. And for those who have the NCLEX, if you're not taking for the sponsorship, he said within 5 days, you have your NCLEX and they apply for the license. In 5 days, if your documents are ready, you should have your Canadian license. And we can now start up with job hunt. And when we get the job for you and you're eligible for the express pathway, it will take 4 to 6 months to get your residence permit in Canada. So we don't have any more questions for the chat box. Thank you so much. If you are just joining us, we will record the classes. The session is being recorded, and we will give you the Zoom link. If you want to reach out to Mr. Douglas, you have our contact, vincentclaseacademy@gmail.com, and we will reply you. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, thank you. It was nice meeting you guys, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. So let's know where you're joining us from on the chat box. Thank you all for joining. We have 124 persons. And if you're joining us from Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, Cameroon, I want to see that on the chat box. Thank you so much. You got value from Kenya. Oh, Alice from Kenya. Thank you. Gold from Nigeria. You guys are awesome. Oh, this St. Clair's Academy is all passion to help nurses all over the world migrate to their respective destination. We've helped so much. We help more than 5,000 nurses for UK, Canada, USA, and we are still doing that now currently for Canada. So reach out to your friends. We are an academy. We have our sessions. We have the IELTS. We have the NCLEX for your NCLEX for your UK, US or Canada pathway. You know you need it, okay? So you join our classes. Tell your friends. If you know anyone who is on this pathway, tell them about our academy. So tell us where you joined us from. And if you missed this session, you will get the recording on our social media platform. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and bye.